Welcome to Secure with Dr. KJ, securing tomorrow one episode at a time. I'm your host, Dr. KJ, and today I am truly honored to be joined by Nicole Darden Ford, Vice President and Customer Security Officer at Microsoft. Nicole is a powerhouse in cybersecurity with over 25 years of strategic leadership spanning the corporate sector and federal government, including service in the U.S. Army. She has led security transformation journeys for major organizations like Rockwell Automation, Carrier Global Corporation, and Baxter International, and has even helped position 2 enterprises for IPOs. Nicole is recognized across the industry for building best-in-class cybersecurity programs and leading high-performing teams that deliver scalable, future-ready security solutions. She serves on the boards of the Cybersecurity Collaborative, Evanta CISO governing body, Team 8, Dark Reading, and Chief, among others. She's also a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion, women's leadership, and giving back to the community through organizations like the Lola Mercedes Parker Foundation. Her impact hasn't gone unnoticed. In 2023, she received the Trailblazer Award from CISO's Connect, and in 2024, she was inducted into the CSO 50 Hall of Fame. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
100%. I really have been looking forward to this. And so let's just jump right into question 1. So at the enterprise scale, you operate with billions of users and countless services spanning cloud infrastructure, productivity tools, and gaming platforms. So what do you see as the most complex security challenge that keeps you up at night? And how are you approaching this challenge differently than you might have 5 years ago?
That is such a great question. I think at scale, you're describing one of the hardest problems, and that is that there isn't like a single vulnerability or a threat actor. It's really about maintaining trust in a world where identity, data, and execution are blurred, right? So what keeps me up at night is the convergence of 3 forces, right? One is identity. We know that identity is the new perimeter. But the identity itself is under constant attack. And that's, everything from human identities, service principals, APIs, bots, and now AI agents are all trying to act with legitimate credentials, right? So the challenge isn't just stopping intrusions. It's really about intent. When everything looks authorized, it's really hard to figure out, where the breach is or where the impact is. And so, credential misuse, I'd say like token replay, MFA fatigue, these are all a part of the challenges that we're facing today. The software supply chain is under attack. Again, we did so much to automate the supply chain, right? But every dependency, the models, the plugins, the CI/CD integration becomes a propagation vector. And so one compromise update, and we've seen that before. This is not a new thing for us, right? Or a poison model can cascade across customers, tenants, and even regions in minutes. So that's a huge challenge for us. And then AI is both an accelerant and a blind spot. So what's concerning to me is that AI dramatically increases the defender's capability, but it also lowers the barrier for attackers. So when you think about the introduction of some new risks, right, the landscape continues to change. And now we have new risks that we have to guard against, like prompt injection and model poisoning and data linkage. So many things now that are on the plate of the CISO that are really challenging. 5 years ago, the mindset was largely reactive, right? We were focused on the perimeter, detecting our breaches. How do we patch faster? How do we add more controls, right? We were very control centric, but today the approach is fundamentally prevention, identity centric, and systems oriented. And so those are the challenges to me over the last few years that have really kind of changed the game.
Right. And so, no, that's a beautiful answer. And so when you think about those challenges, how do you measure the progress of those challenges that may never be fully solved? So think about AI being brand new, right? And everybody talks about data when it comes to AI. That it could be very hard to solve. So how do you go about measuring that progress?
That's a good point. So it is, remember, this is all a data issue. It always has been, right? When you
Right.
talk about what are we protecting? What are our crown jewels? What matters the most to us? It's really that data. And it's really hard to measure effectiveness, right? But I think what we have to do is we have to get very granular and foundational. The controls that we put in place, having a data security strategy, right? Making sure we're tagging the data, all those basics matter, right? Because knowing where that data is and the lineage of that data is more important today than it ever was, especially with AI. And so when I look at the challenges we face today, one of the biggest areas that we haven't spent enough time in is solving the data issue. Now it's not just the CIO's issue. It's
Right.
not even just the CISO's issue. It's the CEO's issue, the CFO's issue, and just the board's issue. And so that's the big challenge, is that it's not a really an easy way to measure success, other than, to me, to determine the maturity of your programs and your ability to track data in a way that helps you to even put guardrails around that data when you start to talk about AI and all of the new technologies that are coming out.
Right.
And so with the speed and scale of tech today, it's hard to really measure effectiveness,
Right.
because the goalpost continues to move.
No, I totally agree. And so when we jump into AI and security and we think about how AI has become deeply embedded in both security operations and as a tool for adversaries, how are you balancing that acceleration of the AI powered defenses with the emerging threats from AI enabled attacks? So, what frameworks or principles are guiding your decisions around that?
So I always go back to foundational tried and true. So let me start with this. So AI
Okay.
is no longer optional. I think that there was a point in time where we could say, hey, let's hold it off for a minute. Let's figure out how we put the right controls in place, and then we can move forward. But guess what? The speed of business is how we're moving. So it doesn't matter that the CISO's not ready. It doesn't matter even if the CIO's not ready. AI is one of the these emerging technologies that's coming whether you want it to or not. So our focus really should be like, how do we use AI for good, right? And I think, Microsoft has really leaned into responsible AI, right? There are, you see NIST has a new AI platform that's come out. And I think all of those things are really important. But there are three things that I want to bring up, and they're really, really, really important. And one is we separate where AI decides from where AI advises, right? So one of the biggest mistakes organizations are making is letting AI act before it's really they've earned the confidence in how it actually reasons. I think it's really, really important for us to understand that. So it is, AI should advise broadly, it should decide narrowly, and it should act autonomously only when the blast radius has been clearly defined. So again, these are really, really important what tenets that I think are really important for organizations to ground on. And when I go in and talk with organizations about their AI strategy, this is where I really focus my time.
I really love that answer because I'm using AI as a thought partner, not as Google, right?
Exactly.
And so, like, that question or thought that I have that could maybe take me, let's just say, 5 hours to get to, I have a framework of the question that I'm thinking of. And then I say, okay, act as my thought partner and give me questions and help me think through this. That is, I think, a proper way to use it.
Exactly.
But I'm one person.
I think, but that reasoning, so you are using it correctly, and I think that is what we really need to help organizations think about: is how are you using AI? Does it reason in a way that aligns with your corporate values and where you're going as an organization? Do you understand the reasoning today? So that's really important. The other thing I talk to organizations about is making sure that AI is treated as a tier 0 asset. So think of its critical infrastructure, right? The decisions that we're asking AI to make and where we're actually, including it in our business processes, those are critical processes for many organizations. And so we have to start to treat it like it's a tier 0 asset. We should be thinking about things like model prompts, embeddings or training data, inference pipelines. Like strong identity is really important, and we make sure that that happens with our critical infrastructure, right? What are we training it against? How are we updating it? What are the prompt execution paths? All of those things are really important. And then continuous monitoring, right? For things like prompt injection and data exfil, right? And making sure that there's the ethical use of AI as well, and that there's an ethical framework that we're actually aligned against to make sure that those decisions are solid and we can stand behind them. And then finally, assuming attackers will use AI better than we expect. Again, it's not, AI is democratized now. That means, guess what? We have it as defenders, but so do the attackers. And so it's really making sure that we're using it in the same way to defend our organizations, right? So social engineering will be, we make assumptions that social engineering will be AI personalized at scale, right? I agree with that. It is absolutely the case. We need to know that going in, and we should start to test and come up with scenarios to understand how AI can be used against us so that we can start defending appropriately. And so again, it's really about optimizing our AI defenses and figuring out like things like behavioral deviation or cross-domain correlation or even time to contain is going to be so much faster with AI-led attacks than normal. So we have to start to test our defenses and to use AI in a way that gives us the best controls possible.
I love each one of those answers because they all make sense to me. And I hope these listeners are really picking up on the nuggets that you're dropping here. So, but when you think about leadership and your vision, right? So you're leading in a security at a global scale. And that requires aligning thousands of security professionals, engineering teams, and business stakeholders around a unified vision. What's one leadership principle or approach that has been most critical to driving security culture and accountability across such a massive organization?
So, as you know, I've been a CISO at large, major organizations. So when I think about the one most important thing that I've learned, and that is how do we make security ownership unavoidable and meaningful, right? At the end of the day, it is not just the CISO's role, right? When you think about it at global scale, it's really about culture. It's not about a policy. It's not even about a security control or even the training. It's about making people feel accountable and empowered to do security every day in their workflow, in their real work, right? It's really about how do we instill that sense of ownership and accountability into every employee and help them understand that this is their responsibility and that they owe it to the organization to take their role as a security champion. Right. And that's what's most important, right? Clarity beats consensus every time, right? So being clear on who owns a risk, who decides, who's a consultant, who's informed about a risk, right, is really important. And so when we think about the big rock that we're trying to or the boulder we're trying to lift up the hill or get up the hill, it's really everybody has to be behind the boulder. Everybody has to understand their role, and then everybody has to act on that accordingly every day. Security is in everything that we do. Right. And so for me, that creating that culture is the most important thing. And so when I look at Microsoft, and I have to say this, I have to give a plug for the Secure Future Initiative, like that's exactly what organizations need to do.
Right.
Maybe not at that scale, depending on, how many people they have. It's
Right.
a whole lot of factors. But in general, creating a program that really starts to empower the employee to take on the responsibility, and that security is kind of our number one, is super important in this day and age when we're talking about AI and the proliferation of technology that's going to be used to attack organizations in the future.
Yeah, no, security is a team sport.
It is.
Bottom line, it is a team sport, and you can have the head of the snake and you can have the bottom, but everybody is there in the same boat, right?
Everybody. And so one of the other kind of mantras that I use is to really kind of push decision-making to the edge, right? Because we have to move at the speed of business. We want business to move as fast as possible. We know that this is the type of, this is the kind of ecosystem and climate we're in. So centralizing our principles, our guardrails, there's some non-negotiables, and putting them in place so people can do their best work, I think is so important. Right. And that we train our teams to make the right decisions, and we trust them to do that.
I love that. I couldn't have said it any better myself right there. So I got a fun bonus question for you. And so what's something completely outside of cybersecurity, a book, a hobby, an experience that has unexpectedly made you a better security leader?
Wow. Okay. So listen, most people know I live in Florida and I love golf. They know that about me. And one of the things that golf has taught me is focus, right? Focus is so important. We do our best work when we focus. We can reach mountains. We can, confidence and all of those things all matter. Right. But focus really gets us to the finish line. And so I learned that being on the golf course, and because you have to focus on that little ball, you got to get that ball to a long way. Oftentimes, let me just say that it looks impossible, looks like an impossible feat, right? But a good hit, a focused effort gets you there, right? And it's the little by little of that focused effort that wins the game, right? And that, to me, when I remember watching Tiger Woods, and so I live in Jupiter, he lives here too, right? Okay. And so Tiger always had this like crazy focus, right? And because of that, he knew what he was trying to get done. His vision was clear. He knew he was trying to get that ball across that fairway. He was accountable because of, being on the golf course and him being the only one. Right. And he used that focus to really help him improve his game. Of course, there's discipline and other things like that, but improve his game, right? He had the discipline to go practice, right? All that is about focus. So to me, it's one of those areas that the older you get, the more you focus, the more you learn, and the more you have the wisdom and experiences to do great things. And so it's always great.
I love it. Well, remind me the next time I'm in Florida that we are going to have to go hit the links. Yeah. Do not laugh at my golf game. But we will go and hit the links. But Nicole, this has been amazing. I truly appreciate you gracing us with your presence here and dropping the amazing nuggets that you just did. So thank you again for joining the show.
Hey, KJ, thanks for having me. And you know what? I will take you up on that offer. Next time you're in Florida, we will go and we will hit some balls.
Yes, ma'am.
What an incredible conversation. Nicole brought so much wisdom to the table today, from identity being the new perimeter and treating AI as a tier 0 asset to making security ownership unavoidable and meaningful across every level of the organization. And I love that she brought it home with the power of focus, courtesy of the golf course. That really resonated with me. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. And share this one with a colleague. The insights Nicole dropped today are ones every security leader needs to hear. This has been Secured with Dr. KJ. securing tomorrow, one episode at a time.